Hello, YouTube. Luigi here. What you're listening to right now is a retake of the voiceover for this photo montage. And the reason I'm doing it is the first take thought I was going to do 10 movies in one video. Well, that's not going to happen because I just finished the video for the first movie and it was all of 19 minutes. So, God forbid, it would have gotten horrendously long. No one would have made it to the end, especially me. So this is an introduction to some of my insights into Casablanca, one of the greatest movies ever made, and I hope you enjoy it. So get some popcorn, snuggle up with somebody, and take good care. Number one on our list is Casablanca, released in 1942, of course. You have to understand what was going on in the world, in Europe in 1942 and in North Africa to really put this movie in its context. The screenplay was based on a theater play by a couple who were touring Northern Africa in 1938. The play was called Everyone Comes to Rick's, and Warner Brothers paid them $20,000 for the rights of the screenplay. Now, I'm just going to take you through the cast here. I'm not going to go into this story. Much better movie reviewers than I have already done this. Obviously, we have Humphrey Bogart as Rick Blaine. Now, prior to this film, Bogart had done his share of gangster movies, Minor Thugs, Major Thugs, but this was a real role for him. And this was the movie that catapulted his career into as a real leading man for Warner Brothers. Peter Lorre plays Ugarte, who has the precious letters of transit. Reek, you have to help me, Reek. Do something, Reek. Dooley Wilson plays the piano. Now here you see his hands on the piano, but Dooley Wilson was a drummer. He never really plays the piano in the movie, but the singing is genuinely his. He plays Sam. Claude Rains plays womanizing police captain Louis Renault. Conrad White. He plays Major Strasse, an SS officer. Now Conrad White was a German who migrated to this country before the war because he couldn't stand Hitler and he hated Nazism. Even though he's playing this incredible villain in this movie, he spent his personal fortune contributing to organizations that were fighting Hitler and resisting Nazism. Now I want you to look at his watch. It's a strange thing. It appears to me to be a Cartier tank, which is an interesting thing to know. So Conrad White is a villain played by a really good guy in real life. Now this is Yvonne. Yvonne, we get the impression, is Rick's ex-girlfriend. He really has a contempt for her, and here he's throwing her out of his own bar because she's too drunk, and she doesn't like this at all. And I think he assigns this guy, the bartender, to get her into a cab. That's Yvonne. Now here is Yvonne fraternizing, polite word, fraternizing with German officers. She's sleeping with them. Now this is a very serious breach of nationalism in occupied Morocco. You don't do that. But she does it because she's on the rebound, having been dumped by Rick. This is Sidney Greenstreet, who plays the owner of the Blue Parrot Cafe, who ends up buying Rick's Cafe Americain when Rick decides to get out of town. Now, I want you to notice something. Sidney Greenstreet, Peter Lorre, and Humphrey Bogart. Where else do we see these three together? The Maltese Falcon. They were all under contract to Warner Brothers. outside of Bogart, the second best leading man in terms of box office was Gary Cooper. Now, at the same time, Ronald Reagan was also under contract with Warner Brothers, but he didn't have the appeal that Bogart or Cooper had. So Reagan got the B movies like Breakfast for Bonzo or whatever that is, and he had a role in the Newt Rockney story where he played George Gipp. Ah, the most beautiful woman in the world, Ingrid Bergman. Now, Ingrid Bergman was 6 foot 9 inches, five 5 foot 9 inches tall, a full 2 inches taller than Bogart. Yet they had to arrange the scenes where Bogart was standing on something, or when they're together on a couch, Bogart is sitting on pillows. So I didn't know that until I started doing my research in this. This is Paul Henreid, who plays Victor Laszlo. He is he's the, I suppose he's the hero of the story, but the truth is he's very wooden. You can see his posture here. He's very stiff. He speaks in very measured, pedantic ways. And he arrives with Ilsa Lund, played by Ingrid Bergman, as a pair. Here they are coming into the cafe. Now, Paul Henreid is naturally tall. I don't think they had to make him taller to stand next to Ingrid Bergman. So here they are walking into Rick's Cafe. And I'm not going to take you through this movie scene by scene, but there are some scenes I do want to punctuate. She notices Sam. She remembers him from Paris, from the good old days in Paris, and she cozies up the piano and she says, "Play some of the old songs, Sam." And Sam says, I don't know what you mean. And she says, "Play it. Play as time goes by." So this was their song, their meaning Ilsa Lund and Rick Blaine when they were loving in Paris. And then Rick hears the song and he comes storming over to the piano and says, "Sam, I thought I told you never to play that again." Now, look at the scared look in Dooley Wilson's eyes. Bogart, by this time, he's looking past Dooley and he sees Ilsa Lund, and his whole countenance changes. And he's kept it inside. He's filled with inner rage and bitterness because she jilted him in Paris and left him standing at the train station. "Sam, I thought I told you never to play that again." So what does Dooley Wilson do here? He knows trouble is brewing. He picks up his piano bench, puts it on top of the piano, and wheels it out of the way just to get out of the scene of battle. Well, it's not a scene of battle. Rick, in spite of what he's feeling inside, goes over to their table and plays the consummate host. He joins them. He orders a bottle of champagne, or maybe Louis Renault does, and he rips up the bill. He puts this on the house, and Renault comments that he's never ever seen that before. Now look at Victor Laszlo, how he's looking at Rick. He's not comfortable because even at this early scene, this first scene, he senses some electricity between Ilsa Lund and Rick Blaine. Now, Rick has started drinking again. You see he's got a glass and a bottle here because it's just too much emotional stuff for him to handle right now with Ilsa back on the scene. But part of him is changing. Part of him is becoming more compassionate. This Romanian lady, oh, and she's so beautiful. She's played by Joy Page, comes up to him looking for advice. So he invites her to sit down, which is unusual enough because he never talks to customers. Things are changing within Rick. And she wants advice about Captain Renault. Is he an honest man? Is he an honorable man? Will he live up to his word? And then it becomes obvious that Captain Renault has offered her and her husband a passage out of Casablanca because everybody's trying to get away from German-occupied Morocco if she would sleep with him for one night. And she's made up her mind to do it. And she tells this She's seeking this advice from Rick in the third person, creating a so-called hypothetical situation. And she said, suppose there was a girl who had to do something terrible, but it was because she loved her husband and she would never, ever, ever tell him. And Rick doesn't give her any advice, but he does say this, and it's important. I stick my neck out for nobody. Well, Rick goes into the casino where her husband is losing his shirt on the roulette table, trying to get enough money to get out of Casablanca without, he doesn't know about the deal that she's already made with Captain Renault. And Rick walks in there, and the croupier knows what's going on. And Rick goes up to this Romanian man, gets behind him, and says, I think you ought to bet on 22. And the croupier knows exactly what's happening. So the next spin of the wheel, it comes up 22. And the gentleman starts to reach for his chips, and Rick says, let it ride. And they play the wheel again, and it's 22 again. And now Rick says, cash out and get out of here. Now the guy's got enough money to legitimately pay for his passage out of Casablanca. And here the wife is hugging Rick in gratitude, but he's so stone cold inside, you can see his hands reaching to pull her arms off of him. Now, there's another scene I'm going to outline because it is the most, God, I'm not going to get through this in one piece. This is the most emotional scene in any movie I've ever seen. This is Major Strauss leading a band of small group of German officers in the singing of an old German patriotic anthem called The Watch on the Rhine. And it's a real, beer garden bombastic kind of song. And although I don't speak German, I always thought they were singing Das Vaterland is good enough. Das Vaterland is good enough. Well, Victor Laszlo is not going to stand for this. He runs down to the band and he says, play the Marseillaise. And they don't take orders from Victor Laszlo. He says, play it. And the trombonist looks up at Rick, who's still on the balcony, and Rick gives him a nod, and they play the Marseillaise. And everybody in the house gets on their feet and sings this amazing rendition of the Marseillaise. Now, I learned something. When the Marseillaise the music starts, it's just the band, this little nightclub band. But they build it up with full orchestration at the end, so it's got far more gravity and weight to it. The Marseillaise. This is Yvonne, the hero of this scene. She's still at the bar with her German consort, but she stands up and in tears belts out this song. So even though she is bedding down with Germans, she's still a French woman in occupied Morocco. Now, Yvonne, who plays Yvonne? Madeleine LeBeau plays Yvonne. And this is just one of the greatest scenes. I can never get through this in one piece. One of the greatest emotional scenes in any movie. And this is typical, we'll talk about this more later, of imperfect people with flaws. They go out of their way to paint Yvonne as a slutty bar girl who drinks too much, okay? And here she is, defying her German consort, standing up and belting out the national anthem. So the movie is full of imperfect people who, in the end, make the right choice. We'll get into that later. Now, is this a love story? Oh, God. You bet it is. This is a promotional photo. This is not in the movie, but it's a good one. So I decided to include it. And here you can see how they made Bogey taller than Ilsa Lung. This is a flashback. We only know of their love affair because of flashbacks to when they were in Paris. And this is an important scene because when they put their drinks down and she's holding him in her arms, and there's just something in her voice. She says, "Hold me, Rick, kiss me as if it'll be for the last time." That is a clue to me. And also the way her whole dialogue is going here, that she already knows, word has already gotten to her that Victor Laszlo, her husband, is still alive. The rumor was that he died in a concentration camp, but he escaped and he's on his way to her. And this is where she starts planning how she's going to make her exit with Rick. And remember, she loves Rick passionately. She admires Laszlo. He was a charismatic leader. She was a young girl. She was swept off her feet with infatuation, and she hooked up with him. She married him in secret. Nobody knew. But she's really head over heels, romantically, passionately in love with Bogart. And this is the end of that scene. Now look again. It looks like Bogart's wearing a Cartier tank on his wrist. Not at all surprising, considering this scene is supposedly shot in France. Yes, this is a love story, but it has its rocky moments. The very first night Ilsa's in town, she finds Bogart, and by this time he's more than halfway through this bottle, trying to console himself. He's full of all the emotions that her presence has resurfaced. He's full of bitterness and anger and remembering being jilted and left at the railroad station. And she's asking him for the letters of transit because she knows if anybody in town has them, it's Bogart, and which is true because Ugarte left them in Bogart's care. And basically, Bogart is just too bitter here to give her what she wants. And she tells him he's being inordinately selfish. The world is burning at the hands of a Nazi madman. And he should step up to the plate and do the right thing. And then this night, where it is implied, and because of the censors, they couldn't show this. This is a married woman, not supposed to have sex with someone who's not your husband. But there's a scene where she's clearly in a nightgown with Bogey, and that implies that there was some bedroom activity. And this is where they reaffirm their love for each other. But Ilsa confesses she's confused, and this is where Bogey says, "You leave all the thinking up to me," and he devises this ingenious plan. So here we are, the end of the movie. I'm not really going to talk about the scene except to say, once again, we have imperfect people, a womanizing, corrupt police captain, who does the right thing at the end. Once again, we have Rick Blaine, a stone cold, I never stick my neck out for anybody, selfish kind of guy who makes the ultimate sacrifice and does the right thing at the hands of a world that's burning. And then in the background, there you see, he's wooden in every scene, I swear, but he's impressive in his own way. Victor Laszlo and Elsa Lung. And this is the end of a great movie. It's one of my favorites. I heard a book review on NPR once called Flicker, and it was of a new genre I'd never heard of called historical fiction. It was about the early days of filmmaking, and I got a Kindle edition of this book, and I read it. I was captivated by it, and it had some real characters like Orson Welles and others, and that's what they mean by historical fiction. Anyway, this is the book that got me into films, and I remember I called myself an amateur film historian. I went out and bought a VHS tape of Casablanca. I must have seen it at least 200 times. I played it until the tape broke, and that was my introduction. I had seen it in college. And another thing about the Marseillaise scene. When I saw the movie at a theater when I was in college, this is sort of like what would happen later with Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's such a cult movie, and the cultists who go to see it They sing every word to every song throughout the whole movie. Well, in the theater where I saw this in God, it must have been the early 70s, I noticed, I'm in a college town now, in a college neighborhood. Many people in the audience start singing the Marseillaise along with the movie. And I learned later that this is what people do when they see Casablanca. They all join in the Marseillaise. So interesting little bit of trivia. Okay, that's going to do it for our first one. Stay tuned for the second one following immediately hereafter.